Okay, all right, we'll go ahead and get started then. And hopefully we can get the video fixed here in a minute. But yes, hi everybody. Thanks for joining for Texas Gun Sense today for this webinar, Stories of Resilience. We're just joined by survivors, advocates, and TGS staff today, for this annual webinar that we like to do. I mean, so much of the work, these people's stories and what they have been through, motivates Texas Gun Sense's work every day to, fight for gun violence prevention here in Texas. And, you guys are a big part of the reason why, we do this work and why our organization exists. And so therefore, we feel like it is definitely right to elevate your guys' voices and your experiences as much as possible. So thank you so much for joining. And, it's equally as important for everyone else here to hear, to understand how just, how big this issue is and how much it impacts people. So yes, we're joined by Andrea Martinez, and survivor of the Buford's shooting back in March here in Austin, Texas, and Bailee Sobnosky, survivor of the Santa Fe High School shooting a number of years ago. And then we have Tracie Brown, the survivor of Mommy Space here. So they will all be sharing their stories and their perspectives on gun violence. What we're going to all in a minute here, I'll let them kind of go over their background and share their experience that brings them to this conversation today. And then after we do that, I'll get into some individual questions for Bailee and Andrea, as well as for Tracie. And then we'll have a few questions that can kind of go for all of the panelists, and then we'll have some Q&A and we can wrap up from there. So that's kind of the brief run of show for how we'll do this. So, okay, I will go ahead and let the panelists here do some introductions. I can do it for the people on and also for TGS staff if you all want to jump into real quick. Um, let's see. Uh, maybe I'll let Andrea go first.
Hi, hello, y'all. My name is Andrea Martinez. I'm currently a student and about to be a senior at UT Austin. I'm studying psychology. And a brief background about me is that I'm a first generation college student, and what experience brought me to become a panelist and become more involved with Texas Gun Sense was the Buford shooting that happened a couple of months ago, as that has pushed me. I've always been really interested in advocacy work, specifically in public education, but after my experience, I wanted to learn more about what we can do in the policy aspect and the advocacy aspect to have common sense gun laws.
Great. Thank you so much, Andrea. And let's see. I'll let maybe Bailee go to next.
Sure, of course. My name's Bailee Sobnosky. I'm a survivor of a mass shooting. When I was 16, a classmate entered my high school and shot and killed 10 people and injured 13 more. It was in 2018. This is at Santa Fe High School, which is about midway between Houston and Galveston, for those who don't know. And that experience really pushed me to realize, if nobody's going to stand up for us, then I have to stand up for us, and really got me involved in advocacy. I went to Texas as well. So, Andrea, you have somebody else in the room. And yeah.
Great. Great. Thanks so much for sharing, Bailee. And Tracie, you want to go next?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tracie Brown, and I am a community advocate. I work with Life Anew Restorative Justice, as well as ATX Peace, and I am the founder of Mommy Space. It is a program that Life Anew offers for women grieving the loss of a child. And what brought me here today to this conversation is I lost my son to gun violence 4 years ago, at the tender age of 15. And in my journey and in my grief, I decided to do something to support mothers and women like me in the Austin area, since it's something that we see every day.
Great. Great. Thanks so much for sharing. Thank you for being here. Okay, so yeah, those will be our panelists today, any staff, if you all want to do a quick share or two, you're welcome to. I realized I didn't go at the beginning. I probably should have let us off. Sometimes I'm bad about that, and I forget to do that myself. So I'm Ethan Sullivan. I'm the Advocacy and Outreach Coordinator for Texas Gun Sense. I oversee our Rising Leaders program, which Andrea and Bailee are actually both a part of, and then as well as our gun owners and healthcare coalitions as well. And then just kind of fill in the spaces with advocacy and what other things from there. So that's a little bit about me and what I do. And then I'll let Nicole, our executive director, go too, real quick.
Hi, I just wanted to give a warm welcome to our panelists. Thank you so much for being here. We value our relationships and partnerships with all of you, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from you. And I want to thank the staff for setting this up, Bobby and Ethan, and all the participants who are here watching and spending an hour of your day listening to the stories of these survivors and being part of our advocacy work. We really appreciate you.
Echoing Nicole's sentiment, thank you all so much for being here. My name is Bobby Watson. I am part of TGS's comms team. Just quick PSA for everyone. This is a webinar format, so if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A function and we'll address them at the end. You do not have the capacity to share things, but we would love to hear your questions so that we can have a robust conversation towards the end. Thank you all so much for being here.
Yes. All right. Thank you guys. And yes, thanks for that as well, Bobby. And this meeting is also being recorded too. We will share this webinar with everybody who was here today if you want to reference back to it. And also feel free to share this with your family and friends. It's important that we get these conversations out to the public. So we will be following up with all of that afterwards. So. Okay, now that I think we got everybody, and we got the run of the show kind of good to go. I'll go ahead and get into the questions then. Okay, I'll go ahead and start with Bailee and Andrea first. And so, I know you guys are both, survivors of mass shootings here in Texas. And so I just wanted to see if you could kind of share how surviving those has changed, the way that you think about safety in schools and public places, and just what's that been like for you?
I can go first.
Yeah, either
So
way.
before my experience, gun violence was something that I had seen and had somewhat of a connection to since I am from El Paso, and that is also where another mass shooting occurred at the Walmart on the east side of El Paso. And so I had known how gun violence has increased over the years. But after experiencing a personal experience here during college was very profound, especially as the location where it happened was just a place that most people would go to have fun, let loose, especially college is a rough time. It can be very lonely, it can be very stressful. And so you don't go in with the mindset of having to be aware of your surroundings most of the time. And after that experience, I was there with my roommates actually. Me and my roommates have become very hyper aware of our surroundings now and realize how much more should be done to protect people, especially also living in West Campus and being at a university like UT, where there's thousands of people every day walking in and out of the doors, meaning there should be more protection and more police around. But that also brings in a deeper conversation of not just should police be, I guess, increased, but the policy surrounding guns is the deeper foundation that needs to be taken care of.
Yeah, I completely understand that sense of this hypervigilance. I remember it was my sophomore year of undergrad once COVID restrictions had been lifted. It was my first time actually being in a large area with a lot of people at UT. And I remember in that moment, my concern wasn't about, what clubs am I going to join? Am I going to meet new friends? My concern was if somebody pulls out a gun, what am I going to do? And that is something that has followed me throughout my life. I carry my phone with me everywhere, and my older coworkers will be like, "Oh, you're such a Zoomer. You have your phone all the time." I'm like, "No, I have my phone all the time because I'm terrified that if I get shot, I want to be able to call my mom and tell her I love her one last time." That is the mindset that you're in once you survive these kinds of things. And it's also from a policy instance, like Andrea talked about, like there is this common notion of like, well, if we increase firearms on campuses, we increase school safety with more police officers or resource officers, it'll be more safe. we've seen now in Texas since Uvalde when they passed those laws in the session following, and we're now getting the data back that that's actually not making students more safe. They're having more run-ins with police officers. They're having more assaults by police officers. And I'm not saying that resource officers are not good in school. We actually had a lot of resource officers, but there's a way to go about school safety that isn't just, well, throw more guns at the problem. That doesn't fix it. And I think after living this experience myself, it really changed the way that I looked at Texas policy and the world that we exist in around us.
Yes, I completely agree. As someone who, in general, I would like to go to law school and learn more about policy, advocacy, and everything. I was never really super aware on the gun laws here in Texas. And after my experience, I did go down a rabbit hole of learning about everything that's going on. And I think it just made me really frustrated because it felt at the same time that the reason I was in the circumstances that I was is because not much has been done on the policy aspect. So then it made me think, okay, then I can do something about this. And if spreading my story helps that cause, then I will do so.
Yeah, great. Thank you all so much for sharing that. Really appreciate it, and I'm so sorry that you both had to go through all this. So, and I guess on that note, just having survived this experience, how do you think that's kind of prompted you to, or how has that prompted you to become an advocate in your communities and in Texas statewide, and how do you kind of see that long term, and what do you hope for there?
Yeah, I would say my experience as well with what Bailey said left me with a choice of either you stay silent or you try to create something meaningful from the experience that happened. And I knew immediately, I was like, I don't want to let this experience deter me from even following my dreams or anything to do with that aspect. And so I told myself, okay, I'm going to share my story and I'm going to choose advocacy. And I think with advocacy, what that brings to the public is more than just statistics. Because obviously, we can always see the statistics, but I feel like it can become very detached. People just see the numbers and go, okay. But when you hear a personal story and hear, especially a survivor's perspective on everything that happened, it gains them the emotional aspect of how hard it can be to go through something like that and maybe push more people to be more aware and educated of what we can do in the future.
Mhm.
I feel like I have a very, not unique, but a different path when it comes to being an advocate because it actually didn't happen after my shooting. It actually took a couple years for me to really get into this space. I had graduated college at that point and I was working a full-time job and I realized, man, there's a lot of trauma that I have yet to process. Maybe I should go find some grief support. And so I actually found an online grief center, or not center, but an online grief group of fellow survivors and meeting many of those older women who had actually lost their sons, meeting them and hearing of their courage and seeing that I was not alone in this pain and this experience and it can be very, um, I guess it makes you feel very alone when you're around people who just don't get it. They're like, why do you still feel this way? But having people who understand those bad days and understand what that's like really gave me the courage to get involved. And I would not be here if it wasn't for those women.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important to like you said, to have people who can maybe understand, a little bit about what you've been through and it is, such a rare, or it's not, I mean, it's common, but like it's not a thing that just anybody can understand, and so it's important to have people in your corner who you can talk to, to get through all this, and that's definitely something that we try to do here at Texas Gun Sense as well. We want to connect people. We want people to have all the necessary tools and resources they need to in the wake of a mass shooting or whatever it might be to get through. And it's important that we have advocates, like you guys, and who are willing to step up for others. So thank you so much. Okay. Um, so we'll come back in a little bit. I'm gonna go to Tracie now. Tracie, I understand a little bit about your story and what you shared, and I'm so sorry for the loss of your son. And I was wondering it's important whenever these events happen to kind of remember who the person was, right? Like Andrea was kind of saying, like, we often just kind of look at the statistics to it, but not enough people look at who were the humans here, like who were they, right? Who was lost, and if you're comfortable sharing, is there anything you want to share to people that you want to remember about your son?
Thank you, Ethan. Absolutely. I would, when it comes to remembering my son, one thing about Brajan, he did not see any flaws in anyone. He was just one of those people that, because you are human, he treated everyone equal, everyone the same. I just remember him growing up and in school. I would always get notes and phone calls of how amazing he did for maybe the custodian. I got a note from the custodian once saying, "Hey, Brajan is the only student that tells me thank you in the morning for taking his tray and thank you for lunchtime." I remember getting a phone call from his teacher where he was one of those that liked to go in and read to the special education children or those children with disabilities. Like he had a friend, he was in a wheelchair, and I think that Brajan brought him out of his comfort zone and kind of just pushed him like, hey, you're normal. We want to play with you. It's okay to have fun. So he was just a person that loved everybody and he was patient with everybody. So, yeah.
Ah, it sounds wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. And again, yeah, so sorry. Um, and how did that, having gone through that, how did that kind of loss then lead you to creating Mommy Space? And how did that all come to be? And how did you connect with everybody there after it all?
So I think that in losing my son, not only did I lose my son to gun violence, I lost my mother to gun violence as well when I was 6 years old. I'm originally from Louisiana. That's how I got to Texas. My dad lived here. And so when my mom passed, I came to live with my dad. And I think I grieved my whole life without knowing. Like when we're children, we don't know the proper way to grieve or start that healing process. So when it came around to my son, Life Anew offered me therapy. And that's where I first came in with Life Anew. They offered me therapy. And my therapist all the time would just tell me how strong I was and how she was learning from me. And she was just amazed at coming in because I did family therapy. I have two other boys as well. I have a 15-year-old and an 8-year-old. So we did therapy, and my therapist kind of pushed me as well as I want to piggyback off of what Bailee said, the people. It's like something that I could not ignore. I had other mothers, some of my friends, some of my family, even people that lost children 7, 8 years ago. It was just them seeing me stride, move forward. Mommy space is something that I could not ignore. I didn't find mommy space. Mommy space found me.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I'm so glad that, that you're, doing this work and that and that you had that, you had that network and that resource to help at the time. I mean, that's so important. And so often a lot of people don't. So, it's fortunate that, there's, people like you out there who can help others and that can relate to you. So, yeah, thank you so much for sharing all that. Um, Okay. I was also I was going to move into kind of some questions for all panelists now, which I think you all saw. And so, um, I was going to ask, so just, and then any of you can kind of jump in, but, looking ahead, just, um, what kind of policies or programs or, changes would you like to see in Texas to help reduce gun violence? I know we have a legislative session coming up soon, and so maybe a way of thinking about that is like, if you could tell your legislators, I want to see this and that, what would that be?
I can go first. I would say the biggest policies that I really look forward to, of course, is raise the age. Those who don't know, we're wanting to raise the age of buying an automated rifle from 18 to 21. And I think also straw purchases. Straw purchases is where somebody is buying a firearm with the intent to give it to somebody who is not legally allowed to buy a firearm. If you want to go down a slightly morbid rabbit hole, if you look up the Iron River, that is the data tracking the movement of firearms across the border into Mexico. And we see that a lot of the firearms that are used in Mexico and used for crime are actually coming from the US and they're coming from Texas. So I would love to see this Texas legislature who says they care so much about border support and border safety really support laws that would actually make communities across both sides of the border safer for all.
Yes, I agree. And I think for me, something I've always thought about is evidence-based policies. I think we should focus more on prevention and responsible gun ownership because that's really what we could focus on, as well as mental health resources. Because I feel like obviously, unfortunately, what causes a lot of these stories to happen is also people with a gun. And I think we should also prioritize mental health in the country and obviously on a smaller level here in Texas. And I think it's important that lawmakers also listen to survivors, families, educators, community members when crafting solutions, which I know is possible, especially when there is legislation sessions. They do have many testimonies possible, and I think if we include that more and give that opportunity to more people that are not aware that you could do that, I think it could bring more of the lawmakers to think about what we can really do to reduce gun violence.
And I would say too, it's just so easy for them to have access to guns. With that age limit, it's kind of like, and I live close to an academy. It's time and time again when I go in there and I'm seeing these 18-year-olds, it's easy access. Like I always like to say, guns are like the new gold chains, and everybody feel like they need one. And then also I think people are afraid to speak up. We need more of our community going down to the Capitol, going to these meetings and speaking up on how having this easy access to these guns, they're affecting them. I have parents to where they tell me that they didn't even know that their child had a gun. They didn't even know that they can go to academy and buy guns and bullets. And it's just like, yeah. So, and education too, as well on gun safety. My son's death was an accident. And so, if that person would have known how to properly handle that gun, keep it locked up, I think that that could have been prevented. So, just education and as well as changing that law on age requirements for being able to have a firearm.
Yeah, definitely. Well, yeah, no, that all makes a lot of sense, and those are definitely a lot of the things that we're definitely behind at Texas Gun Sense too. And there's we still got to kind of we still are a little bit a ways from session, so we'll kind of start planning all that out as we get a little bit closer. But yes, those are definitely important things to keep an eye on here in Texas, and that's definitely something as we get closer, we definitely are going to need people, here to advocate, in Austin, whether that's to defend against something or whether that's to advocate for something. We'll definitely need you all and everybody who's willing to, to be here to fight the good fight, right? And so, we'll definitely, as the time gets closer, for session, we'll definitely be sharing a lot of ways with people for getting involved during that time. So it'll be important, and that's why we do things like this beforehand, right? Is to have strong community engagement and bring people together to hear these stories and whatever it might be, so that we can keep up that momentum, right? And so that it doesn't kind of die out between sessions. And so, um, but yeah, those are definitely a lot of things that we're going to be keeping an eye on. And so, um, another thing I just wanted to, um, kind of ask was, you know, for those kind of listening today, is there, um, from your kind of perspective, what do you think like a safer Texas would ideally look like? Like if you could just articulate that, like here's to me, here's what that would look like. What would you all say?
I would say that's a pretty hard question to answer, but I
Mhm.
think in an ideal world, like Bailey had mentioned about the hypervigilance as well after her experience, I feel like after my experience, I did not go to school for like a week because it was pretty hard to be at UT where there's thousands of people, thousands of doors, classrooms, and just realizing how, like she said, anyone can come in and just shoot me. And that was really scary. And I think I'd like in an ideal world to not have to worry as much, which is, of course, easier said than done. But I think I'd like to know that if I go outside, I'm going to be okay at the end of the day and not have to have this fear of I'm going to have to text my mom, like, I love you, like, how I hope everything works out. Because that's exactly what I ended up doing in my experience when I was at Buford's and on 6th Street when everything was happening, I did have to text my mom that. I did have to tell her, I'm so sorry for everything that's ever happened in life. Like, I love you. You were the best mom ever. And then the next day she woke up and she was like, "What? Why did you text me that?" And I was like, "I'm so sorry. It's because this happened." Because also by the time that she woke up, it still hadn't really broke the news. And so I had to break the news and tell her everything that happened. And I like, again, in an ideal world in Texas, that families don't have to find out about experiences like this, where I wouldn't have to tell my mom or my parents or my brothers, like, oh, by the way, this happened, and then have my parents be like, do you want me to come to Austin? I can be there for you and take care of you. Like, I don't think that should be happening on a daily basis. And the fact that, as well, because my experience, there was thousands of people there. I have many friends, my roommates were there, and the fact that all of us, all of our families were affected by this is something that I just wish doesn't have to happen again.
And I'm going to say, like, easier said than done. If everyone had somebody to talk to, I'm finding out everybody doesn't have a person that, like, when they're going through something, when they're stressed, when they're depressed, they don't have anyone to talk to. When we have our shootings, it's for something simple, something where it's a misunderstanding where we could have had a conversation. I just think education on or therapy, just to get out that frustration. Talk to someone that may understand and may have been in your shoes before. They can give you some type of advice. I'm finding out that we have our adults that are still dealing with trauma from their childhood, so they don't know what it looks like to support their children, and so it's kind of like a cycle. So just support and having someone to talk to, I think that that would cause for a safer Texas.
I was sitting here thinking while Andrea and Tracy were talking, man, that is a hard question because partially it's I don't know what that looks like because I haven't grown up in a safe Texas. But my my image of a perfect Texas would be no more children have to know the pain that I felt at 16 surviving that. And that will have safer avenues for people who are at risk of harming themselves or others because there was warning signs. There are often warning signs that get ignored when issues of mass shootings, but also suicides. Suicides are 60% of all firearm deaths in Texas. And I wish my idea of a safe Texas is that there are avenues for people to get the help they need, get it affordably because we have a incredible mental health um, emergency here in Texas. We don't have access to enough resources and also have legal pathways for people to, have their firearms either removed temporarily through red flag laws, which were banned last legislative section, or have, city buybacks, which have also been banned by the state of Texas. So my safe Texas looks like having the avenues for us to have people get the help they need and relinquish firearms when they feel like they need to, but also have the chance to get them back once they're at a point where they feel like they're safe. That way, these awful experiences like all of us experienced don't have to happen continually anymore.
Great. Yeah, thank you all so much, for sharing yeah, and it's, that point that you were saying, Bailey, about how it can be a tough question to answer because, there haven't really known what a safe Texas looks like, and I think that's just it right there. I mean, I think that hits the nail on the head, and that's why, we gotta, you know, like you said, keep up this fight and make it a point that, nobody should have to experience what you all have experienced again, right? And that's, we work, day in, day out to make sure that, that doesn't happen. So, but, we definitely can't do it without, without great advocates and a great network. And so, it's important. So thank you all, so much. Okay. Uh, I'm going to go ahead and, unless TGS staff have any further questions or anything, move into the Q&A part here in a moment. I see some good questions here. If you have anything to share or have a question, just go ahead and write it in the Q&A box and we will address it. Um, I see that we have forgive me if I am not pronouncing your name correctly. Preeti Rahan here, and some really good questions. Thank you for being all the way here from Georgia. Thank you so much for being willing to listen, and thanks for the work that you do in healthcare. These are some good questions, and I'll go ahead and start with the bottom one, and maybe. I think maybe Nicole, you might be a good one to answer this if you don't mind. But it was, I'll start with this bottom question you asked, but did survivor-led advocacy help with the establishment of Texas Gun Sense, and how were those stories used for advancing advocacy? I know you've been here a while, Nicole, and I thought you might have some good insight on that. So,
It's a great question. And yes, so Texas Gun Sense was founded in the wake of the Sandy Hook school shooting. I was not the executive director at the time, but I was an advocate at the time. And the history of Texas Gun Sense is rooted sadly in a tragedy. One of our co-founders survived the Virginia Tech shooting and lost a loved one. And I'll just add, because I think it's important for context, that at that time there was not an established, formalized Texas gun violence prevention organization here on the ground focused just in our state. And that is exactly what the co-founders sought to do. And here we are years later continuing to do that. So I'm very sad for that tragedy, but very grateful that it created Texas Gun Sense and we've been able to be here today talking to incredible advocates and survivors like you all. Thank you for the question.
absolutely, absolutely, and thank you so much for sharing, Nicole. And for those who have other questions too, go ahead and put those in the Q&A, and we can address those. And then I see the top one also from you, Preeti, and talking about how been working in a group of healthcare professionals in Georgia, and you guys are fighting for firearm safety legislation there. And that's a good question about how we have interacted with healthcare professionals and ways that what we have found particularly helpful or areas for improvement and strengthening. Yeah, that's a really good question, and I'm glad that you want to get Georgia a program like this. I think every state really should have a program like this. We're fortunate to have something like this in Texas, but gun violence happens everywhere, right? And it's important that that everybody has a resource like this, and so I'm glad that you guys want to get something like that going in Georgia.
Ethan, I could
Um,
talk a little bit about a couple of the programs in Georgia,
oh,
just
sure.
just for the quickest minute. And I don't, if this is a repeat
Sure.
for
Yeah,
the
go for it,
person
please.
who asked the question, the we have some great peer organizations in other states. Georgia's really important because we are in a similar legislative kind of landscape, and so we have relationships with some great advocates in Georgia. We have the Georgia Majority for Gun Safety, I believe is their full name. They also work very closely with Georgia clinicians for gun safety. So check them out.
Great. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. And yeah, I think that's we'd be happy to if you want to follow up with us via email too. We can certainly connect you with those resources so that you guys can get started on that work there. So and again, thank you for being here from out of state and listening. Really do appreciate that engagement. Um, okay. Let's see here. I'll start with. Um, this one, it is anonymous attendee, so I'll just go off of that name. But asking what is the most, and this is, can anybody can answer this one here. What is the most difficult part of advocacy work, and what do you need from the greater community to assist with all the work you do? She says this question is for panelists and others on the call, and so I'll let you all, if you have anything you wanted to say about it, feel free.
Um, for me, I would say turning it off and kind of taking some time for yourself. I think when you are in advocacy work, it chooses you, you don't choose it. So sometimes it's hard to turn it off, especially when you get out there, you network, people find out who you are, you get calls all times of the night, emails, just people wanting advice. So I think that's probably the hardest part about the community advocacy work.
Yeah, I agree. I think something that I realized with advocacy work in any field, with whether it be in just like gun sense or any other aspect in the political field, is to continue to keep going, even though it can be really hard. And that means like having compassion for yourself, especially after everything that you've been through. And I think with social media, it's like I've realized it can be really hard to even be on it because there's just always so much negativity. And I think that negative loop that social media keeps you in can freeze you. And I think it did freeze me in other aspects in my life before, where I was like, should I even do anything? Is everything gonna get better? Because that's what social media makes you feel. And the news is just so much negativity, so many bad things happening all the time. And like, in all honesty, we're all human. And so seeing this, we can't just turn it off and be like computers and be like, well, I'm just gonna keep going. I think for me, I've had to be like, okay, I'm not gonna be on my phone. I'm going to delete TikTok for like a couple days, and then I'll download it again for a couple days to be educated. So I think it's having the balance, I agree with Tracie, of continuing to be educated without it letting you fatigue your compassion and your empathy. Because if you continue to just look at all the negativity, it will freeze you, and you don't want that. I think as well, when it comes to like the other aspect of the question was about, let me see the rest of the question. Oh, like what do you need from the greater community to assist with the work? I would say it's really just as simple as sharing it, because once people become educated on this aspect, it promotes people to care. So that's like the biggest thing.
Yeah, I totally get that negativity thing on social media. I remember seeing anytime I do any of these advocacy like things or any kind of post that I make about things that we're doing and seeing negative comments, that always gets to me. And I would also say the having the small setbacks after small wins. So like we got a bunch of funding last legislative session and now we're having issues trying to get that funding actually allocated out to communities. That always is really disheartening to me. Um, but I have hope that we're going to continue, we're going to persevere. And I would say the thing that I would like the most from the greater community is just show up. Talk to your legislators. We're about to enter a huge election cycle. They are paid with your tax dollars to represent you. If you have an issue that matters to you, like gun violence prevention, talk to them about it. Talk to them about the safety measures that you have in your community. Talk to about, available funding. I think there's like $3.5 million of funding right now in the Texas Ledge for community violence intervention and safe storage. Talk about ways that, you've seen your community impacted and how you as maybe an individual citizen or as a government worker or a business owner care about your community being safe for all.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, thank you all for that. It's definitely important to to talk to your legislators and make sure that, you have the right representation in place. I mean, that's how things get done, and they're, paid to advocate for communities and keep us safe. And so we got to have the right people in place for that. And then yeah, absolutely on the kind of what y'all were saying, definitely about like social media. I think that yeah, it's definitely tough to it's I think that's, it's a tough balance. It's like we need it to be informed on things. We need it to advocate. We need it to bring people together. But yeah, it can also be a place that fosters a lot of negativity. And so and it can be hard, like Tracie was saying, to kind of like turn that off, right? And if you're in that advocacy mindset. It's hard to when you see negative comments or people who aren't on our side. I mean, we deal with that every day. It gets to you. It's hard to not let it, right? But I think what I would try to do at the end of the day is just remember that we do have a lot of despite even if it doesn't feel like it sometimes, there's a lot of people here who do care and who do want to do the right thing, and it's just about putting it all together. And so things like this are a start. And so. Okay, I will get to another question here real quick. Looks like it's from Judy Ward. Thank you for your question, Judy. It is what legislative progress do you believe to be possible in this upcoming Texas session? Um, and she said, I realize the answer can change depending on the outcome of the November elections. If anybody has anything to share on that real quick, feel free.
I'll just say, and Bailey, you might have some remarks because I know you have some really good thoughts on this that you've alluded to already. My answer will not be the best one, only because you're right, Judy. We have to. It won't be the most certain one, I should say. We're just there are a lot of unknowns. In terms of how the landscape will change. Our work is nonpartisan, and by the way, I firmly believe that that support for gun violence prevention is nonpartisan, and people from all backgrounds support the work that we do. But there is no question that the makeup of the legislature has a significant impact on what we can move legislatively when it comes to proactive, good, safe legislation. And frankly, they've made a lot of really reckless and dangerous decisions when it comes to harmful legislation. Bailey talked a little bit about some of those real battles that we fought, and we win some and we lose some. And so we are watching very closely, just like probably you are, to see where our opportunities will be. We have priorities that are evergreen for our organization that will continue to be. So, for example, with secure gun storage legislation, that'll be a big one. It always has been. We've made progress on it before, and we believe that it may be possible to build on that. And the raise the age legislation that Bailey referenced earlier, that got bipartisan support in 2023 and went through a committee vote, which is um, a rare opportunity. And so we're going to be looking at where we can continue to push that forward, and we'll keep you posted.
Yeah, I can definitely speak to that question as well. Me and Nicole spent what was that, like 12 hours last year or 2 years ago
Who
in
knows?
a
Hmm.
session hearing. Worth it, worth it.
Yes.
I don't know exactly what policy priorities. Obviously, it's all going to depend, as you said, on who gets elected and how the legislative body is made up. But I will say I know we will make progress. I think from my experiences talking to legislators and even just regular people from a wide variety of the political spectrum, there is so much more common ground than people are led to believe. I met with people who, you know, um, argued against every single thing I advocated for, but at the end of the day, be like, you know what, you're right, mental health care is so important, and we do need more support for that. Or you're right, I don't want dangerous people who have committed domestic abuse or committed crimes to have access to firearms. Um, there is so much more support for it than you realize. And I don't want people to get pessimistic. I think it's really easy to, in a lot of the media that we hear and a lot of the news going around about, what the Texas ledge may be. But just know that there are so many people backing this, and your support as well is so crucial to the kind of work that we're pushing for. And also that your legislators really do care about survivors. If anybody else sitting here is a fellow survivor, I can say personally, like, I didn't think my legislator was really going to care, but his office was reaching out to me saying, we'd love to talk to you. We'd love to work with you. And I've had legislators from across the state say the same thing. So I promise you there's more that you can work on than you think. And as long as we put in the work, we're going to get there.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah. We definitely got to put in the work. And I think that's a great point about not being pessimistic. That's definitely one of the worst things we can do, right? And things won't get done that way. And so it's definitely important to find common ground and advocate wherever we can. And, we'll be more committed than ever to doing that here in the coming months. So great. Okay, I think if y'all have any other questions, or audience, if y'all have any other questions or anything, feel free to put those in. But um, I think I don't think I'm
Ethan,
seeing
I
anything
don't,
more right now.
I
Yeah,
don't
of
see any new questions in there. And if while people think I do have one myself, I just want to first off say thank you all so much for sharing your
course.
stories. We know that can be a really hard and traumatic thing to constantly retelling some of your most horrific experiences. And in that vein, when you're engaging with gun violence prevention and advocacy, how can the space balance sharing and highlighting these stories without causing further harm or exploiting that kind of pain?
I think honestly, that's a really good question. I think the best way to do it is understand not every survivor is at the same place in their journey of healing. Um, Not everybody wants to share this kind of stuff, and I there's a story that I tell a lot, and it always sticks with me. When I first got involved in advocacy, and I went back to my survivor group after I had done a little bit of work, and I talked about all the things I did, and talked about why it was so important for us survivors to get involved with advocacy and do this kind of work. I remember this woman answered, and she had joined the group really new, and she was so very fresh in her experience. She told me, "I don't want to be an advocate. I just want my son back," and that was. Uh, Very hard to hear, not in a sense of I was upset by it, but just a kind of grounded me in like, oh, I need to be more mindful. I think giving survivors a space to show up and care and have a voice is okay and good, but also realizing that it's one thing to look at this from a policy perspective, it's another for it to be a lived experience. Um, and I think just giving the grace for that is the most important, if that makes sense.
That does, Bailey. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's a hard question to answer, but I basically agree with Bailey as well, where it's just like understanding that everyone's at a different point in their healing, as well as I guess maybe just at first going to them with comfort and as like a shoulder to cry on, if that makes sense. And then after it's like, okay, let's get down, if possible, if they're willing to as well, to do advocacy work. Since I'm like we've shared, these experiences are very important to share with the general public. That way, more people understand what has happened and what could be done.
I agree. In my journey, I'm learning that everyone may not be where I am, no matter how much time has passed. People say time heals all wounds, and it doesn't. Um, and so that is something that I like to tell folks. And I feel like being patient, allowing it's okay for a person to sit in the room and not say nothing. It does not mean that they're not listening or that they're not learning. They may just not be comfortable yet. And then I also have those people in when you see me, I'm bubbly, I'm engaging, I like to have fun. But when you learn my story, I think it kind of motivates them to say, hey, I can do this. I can live this. And so I think just being patient and accepting people for where they are, um, you'll get better feedback and better support, I feel like, in those survivors because they're like, hey, I trust her. I can do this. And just being honest, showing your emotion, showing that you are a human, most of the time it's gonna bring them in every time.
Yeah, yeah, so well said. Yeah, and great question, Bobby, and thank you all for answering. And thank you all for being here and for being willing to share your stories. I know it takes a lot of courage to do something like this, and so we really do admire you for being here and being willing to share it. So yeah, thank you all so much. Um, Okay, I'm not seeing any more questions or anything for the time being, so we can kind of start to wrap up here. Bobby, did you have the link tree link by chance? Um,
Yes, not there's no chat feature here. But
oh
after the
yeah,
recording, we after this webinar,
yeah,
we'll send the recording and a link tree with resources of how to stay engaged with Texas Gun Sense to everyone who registered for this. So thank you all so much for being here.
perfect. Yeah, yeah. So we'll send that in the follow-up email along with this recording and in that link tree. If for the audience, if you're motivated to connect with Texas Gun Sense and to get involved with gun violence prevention work, you absolutely can. We would so love to hear from you. On that link tree, there are multiple ways you can do that. If you're youth on here, or if you know somebody who is like a college student who would want to get involved in this work, there's the sign up link for the Rising Leaders Coalition on there. Would love to connect with you there. There's ways for our healthcare partners to get involved. We also recently launched a Responsible Gun Owners Coalition. Some of you may have seen those videos on social media. And so we're also building that out as well. So for anyone who's there who wants to be a part of that, we would love to have you. And then other ways to get involved too, toolkits and such for learning how to be an advocate and learning more about the issue. So we will follow up with that. Yeah, okay. Is there anything I'm missing or anyone have any final comments? No?
I do. I think
Oh, oh
that
yeah.
we've
Oh, go for
had,
it.
right, my apologies.
Go for it.
I think the only thing I want to leave everybody with is have hope. Like every day, more and more people, you know, understand where we're coming from or learn more about gun violence prevention. There's research coming out every day about evidence-based ways of preventing firearm violence. And we've talked about how it's easy to get pessimistic in much of this call, but I just really want to tell people have hope. Your perseverance and your work does pay off, especially in this space.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a great closing note. And, it's important to have hope. And, I think, with all of us, we can definitely make a difference and, get some things done to make Texas a safer place for everybody. So,
Tracie
all
and
right.
Andrea, Tracie, I saw you come off mute. It looked like you might have had another comment. And so if either of you have closing comments, please feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, for anyone out there, I get the question all the time, like, Tracie, what can I do for you? I don't have the words. I don't know what to say. I've never been through this. The advice I give is just be consistent, be kind. It's not a support doesn't always mean financial. Phone calls, and like I tell people too, when you are going through what you're going through, like you have that spotlight, everybody's there. Call me if you need me. I'm here, but once the smoke clears, those text messages stop, those knocks at the door stop, all of that. So, just be consistent. If you do have someone in your life that is, they're going through gun violence trauma, be consistent, support them, because they need it. It's some days where I don't even want to get out of my bed, but I have those people that's gonna call me like, "Hey Tracie, what you doing?" And just because they're so used to me being that in their lives, they return it. So, and it helps. It helps to keep me motivated and to keep moving. So, thank you guys.
Yeah, I agree, especially with like when experiences like this happen and just having multiple people call and like and do all these things. I think like the best thing that I realized what I needed when I was going through that is like to actually ask me what I need. Because obviously people tell you like if you need anything and it's like, well, I need lots of things. I don't even know what I really need at this point. But if you tell them exactly like okay, like, what do you need? Do you want me to get you food? Do you need me to just watch a movie with you? That's something that I realized I liked. I didn't care really about anything, but I just didn't like being alone. Like, me and my roommate, since both of us experienced this, we were just watching movies, eating pizza, and just staying in bed all day and just being like, this is all I needed. And then my friends would text me and be like, what do you guys want? And we'd be honest, be like, I just want pizza right now. I really just want someone to eat pizza with and have a silly little conversation and not talk about what happened. And so I think that's like the best thing. But back to what Bailey was saying as well, I agree with like I think a little bit of hope goes a long way because as well, like I've said before, it can be a very negative atmosphere with social media and the polarization that's going on in the world. So I think as long as we realize that I think we all want the same thing and that's to be happy, I think we'll go a long way.
Yeah, yeah, so well said. Thank you all for that, and again, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your stories. Your bravery is amazing, so appreciate it. Okay, we will go ahead and if there's no further things, we will go ahead and wrap up, and we will share the recording and the link tree with everyone who was here today. And again, please share that with your friends and your families. We want conversations like this to be elevated as much as possible. So we really appreciate your engagement and for being here and hope you all have a good rest of your day.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, especially to our panelists.
Mhm.
Thank you guys for having me. Have a great day.
You as
All
well.
right. Thank
Yes,
you
thank
all.
y'all. Have a good day.
Mhm.
Bye,
Appreciate
everyone.
Thanks,
it.
Nicole and Ethan.
Mhm.
Thank you.